Yeah, so it's been a while since I last uploaded. No good reason to say the least, I was just lazy. But I'm back now, and that's all that matters. Today should be a much longer episode, as I've more than made up for what I missed. I wouldn't want to spoil, but Moonlord might not be as far as we thought. I'm not sure I can continue to make weekly videos, so I'll try my best to do them every 2 weeks if possible. Like I said, I'm back now, so why not just get right into the video? Enjoy. Since the last episode, we haven't even entered hard mode, which is disappointing to say the least. But luckily, there are only 5 more bosses, including the Wall of Flesh, until we get hard. First of which is the Queen Bee. So, I went over to my jungle until I found the large tree structure with the beehive below. I did make a pylon for quicker access, since I don't have a bed right now. Now, I like some clean-ish arenas, so obviously I had to do some renovating to this hive, making it go from this natural hive to an okay arena. I mean, I don't need this much space for a simple bee, right? Yeah, so she took a few attempts. I mean, with those bees and some less than optimal mobility, she's a little difficult. After all, I only died to her 5 times. But anyways, here's the full winning attempt. In that treasure bag held a magic item I held dear to my hotbar, the bee gun. High damage, homing, low mana usage? I mean, what more could you ask for? After a quick reforge, I thought I was prepared for the old man's curse, but I was sorely mistaken. As you may notice in my first fight, this boss has a few attacks, and a decent amount of projectiles. Skeletron wiped the floor with me, with almost 20 deaths into a pre-hard mode boss? That's just disappointing. The main attack that would get me early on would be his head charges, where he tracks the player and does around 100 damage per hit. With my current mobility, I can hardly outrun it, causing many premature deaths. For the aforementioned mobility issue, I got some aerialite ore, which completely slipped my mind, and crafted the bundle of balloons, as well as a magluminescence. It would have been less time consuming if 1. I didn't suffer from skill issues, and 2. I had something like a Cosmolite, because I had to sleep until the next night every single time I failed. But as long as you never give up, you make progress, right? Yes! Finally! What the hell?
I failed.
Are you okay?
Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. I suppose so.
Who are you?
I'm Solon. Sorry, I just can't think straight. We can talk later. Right now, I need some time.
Alright, I'll give you some space.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's you again. Hello. This is a bit forward, but could you provide me with some assistance? Sure, how can I help? Thank you. As you can tell, I don't really have a home now. I want you to plant this flag somewhere suitable, in a nice open area. Once you do, I'll set up a campsite nearby. I set her flag down next to my spawn town. Certainly an interesting character. But anyway, now it's time to dive into the newly disowned dungeon. There are only 2 things I need from the dungeon: the water bolt found hidden in the books, and a cobalt shield for a very important accessory in the future. After my little dungeon dive, I chatted up Solon at our camp. Hello, what brings you here? I noticed your telescope was broken. Oh yes, I had hoped to pass the time with some stargazing, but it seems I won't be able to. I lack the resources to repair it. I could fix it for you. Oh, if you could fix it, I'd greatly appreciate it. Once it's repaired, we could go stargazing together. After fixing your telescope. Thank you! Astronomy has always been a passion of mine, and I'm excited to share it with someone else. We can begin once night falls.
Ooh, that's one of my favorites. That's the Celestial Rift of Doom. It's really quite interesting. Wait. Huh? I've never seen anything quite like that before. Whatever it is, I've got a bad feeling about it.
Is there anything we'd be able to do about it?
I need to think that over a bit.
Solon, that was rhetorical.
I suppose you're right. I might just be getting worked up over nothing. Either way, I'm glad we got to enjoy the stars together. They were really beautiful tonight. Hopefully we can enjoy them again sometime. In the meantime though, have this personal design of mine. I'm sure you'd be able to put it to good use. Anyway, I'll be going to sleep momentarily. It's quite late.
Okay. Whoa. A celestial rift of doom doesn't sound that amazing. I sure hope nothing comes of it. A feeling of impending doom lingers with Solin's words. However, we can't stop now. Also, I turned in some books I've been collecting off screen for some decent rewards, primarily the Star-Blessed platforms, which I'll use in many future arenas. Directly after that, I gathered one more of the 5 schematics. This one from the Tundra. Speaking of the Tundra, oh that's right, Deerclops, an almost forgettable boss. Not going to bore you to death with this boss fight, as I just flew above her head and shot down the whole time, dodging all attacks. Now, I'm unsure what happened to the sound, but this recording has no audio. Ooh, it's time for one of my favorite bosses, the Slime God. For a rather formidable foe, at least by name, it only took 2 attempts. From that treasure bag, we got the final pre-hard mode weapon in the Subsuming Vortex crafting tree, as well as an adrenaline upgrade, the Electrolyte Gel Pack, permanently increasing adrenaline mode damage by 20% and damage reduction by 5%. I'm becoming a beast. Anywho, I finally made my codebreaker base, enabling me to gradually decode schematics and upgrade until it's at its full potential. With a newly obtained Sunken Sea schematic, I'll craft and add the decryption computer to the codebreaker and decode the next schematic. However, to make the long-range sensor array, I need mithril or orichalcum bars, so that's off the table. But not for long, as the only thing standing between me and a hard mode is the wall of flesh. It's just as I said.
So in the next episode, I will pass the wall of flesh and enter hard.
It only gets harder from here, hence the name. So many doors have just opened up by entering hard mode. I'd love to say that first I had entered the astral infection and gathered starlight soot to make the comet shard, but I never thought of it. I returned to the surface to witness an alarming sight. Isn't that... It can't be. Indeed, it was the celestial rift of doom, closer, like it's waiting, watching. But there it goes. I mean, spooky, but nothing has happened yet. I just have to keep on moving. So, inside that bag was one of 2 consumables that grant an extra accessory slot, and a warrior and ranger emblem, which I later shimmered into a sorcerer emblem. Before Queen Slime, I was keen on obtaining the frigid flashbulb, so I went to the underworld to gather some souls of habit. I, of course, got my life fruits, or a few for now, as you can tell by my hearts. With the frigid flashbolt now in my arsenal, I confidently marched to my hollow, which covers my former desert, and face Queen Slime. Directly following her defeat, Cryogen came next. I crafted the cryo key and tried my luck against it. No way! Damn. I finally decided to upgrade my armor to palladium, and I tried again. So this happened a lot more times. It's almost always when it's below 25% that I lose focus and just start dying. It's a little tough, but doable. But after several attempts, I made the smart decision to get the rest of my life roots, which I should have done in the first place. I also made some demon wings in the meantime because I'm all about the DPS. I tried a few more times and just couldn't pass that last 25%. I think that at this time, I thought of a weapon change. Less aiming could be beneficial. The homing capabilities of the Poseidon, dropped by a giant claim in a hard mode, were perfect. Although in practice, they could be a little too slow sometimes. I also made the Ankh shield, which should negate the shield debuff in case I get hit. I'm all set now. You may notice I'm a little shaky because I was quite nervous towards the end of the fight. But with the defeat of Cryogen, cryonic ore begins to generate in the underground tundra. And their bag brings about a free set of wings and other useful accessories like the Frost Player. Permafrost, as a thanks for releasing him, gives us a dormant key. It seems Solon may know something about this. Hey, something up? Permafrost gave me this key for freeing him. Would you happen to know anything about it? That key doesn't strike me as ordinary. It's imbued with some form of magic spell. Ooh, that gives me an idea. An idea? What kind of idea? I'm picking up a faint magic signature identical to the one emitted by this key. It's somewhere deep within the frozen caverns. We should go and explore it. If it was locked, I'm sure we'll find some awesome things in there. Here, I'll mark its location on your map. I'll be there when you're ready. I've been looking around, but there doesn't seem to be much of note, except for this. This frozen artifact appears to be some sort of seed. Furthermore, it has incredible magical potential. I can sense it. I'm not sure what it could be used for, but I'd recommend taking and holding on to it for later. Will do. Good. As for me, I'll give this some thought. I'm sure we could do great things with this seedling. Either way, I'll be taking my leave, I think. This place is rather small. I planted the first seed next to my spawn. It's now time for the first mechanical boss, the twins. Spasmatism and Retinazer might be the hardest of the mech bosses, solely because of their second phases, which can often be a hassle to deal with. Homing projectiles and dashes were the only glaring difficulties in these fights. It took me many attempts, most due to poor movement on my part. After 5 attempts, I made the amalgamated brain so I could negate some damage, which is very helpful in their second phase. In the very next attempt, I did significantly better, which means I can get these done soon. In like 8 more attempts, I defeated Spasmatism, dying shortly after Retinazer. This was a major turning point though, as a new weapon dropped from him, the Focusing Grimoire. This weapon was a powerhouse for me at the time. I mean, I have to thank myself for playing Death Mode, or this might have taken significantly long. The DPS potential of this weapon outperformed all of my weapons, and as a result, I'm gonna skip over the Destroyer because maybe there was some conflicting AIs, but this fight was so out of the ordinary and very laggy, as you can see. He'd spawn, run off screen, and come back with a stream of lasers coming directly for me. It wasn't hard, per se, actually quite amusing, but I defeated him after a few. Following my triumph, I went ahead and gathered some hard mode ores. If you have a keen eye, you'd notice that after each mech boss, a new tier of ore is unlocked. So, after defeating the second mech boss, I can obtain titanium and adamantite. With some new ores, I made the long-range sensor array, then fetched and decoded the schematic from Draydon's lab in the jungle. I had the other 2 from the underworld and the tundra from other endeavors. It's back to bosses. And next was the Aquatic Scourge, a very easy boss. Brimstone Elemental was the upcoming boss, which also took one attempt. She has a lot of fun attacks, as most players would agree, and the fight is very fair. Directly after came the third and final mech boss, Skeletron Prime. Last time we fought this boss, maybe 5 months ago or around then, he was far more difficult than he is now. As a matter of fact, he only took one attempt. Not a single stat improvement later, I faced one of my favorite hard mode bosses, Calamitous Clone. Cal Clone drops Ashes of Calamity, which can be used to craft Cores of Calamity and the Sigil of Calamitous, a direct upgrade to the Celestial Emblem, which grants plus 15% magic damage, plus 100 maximum mana, minus 10% mana usage, and increased pickup range of mana stars when equipped. But I was confident I wouldn't need any upgrades for the next boss on the list, Plantera. Following her defeat, perennial ore now generates in the underground, and new foes can spawn in the desert and the dungeon, granting us a larger dungeon loot pool and one mini-boss in the desert, the Great Sand Shark. From her bag, we get the Wasp Gun, Temple Key, and Living Shards, used in many useful crafting recipes, including the Miracle Fruit. Hollowed ore began spawning in the underground hollow after Skeletron Prime, and since I would need Chlorophyte for Spectre armor, I needed a Drax. With both hollowed bars and enough chlorophyte, I scoured the dungeon for just a bit of ectoplasm, as you need 2 chlorophyte bars and 1 ectoplasm to make 2 specter bars. The specter armor set grants plus 42 defense, plus 25% magic damage, plus 17% magic critical strike chance, plus 60 maximum mana, plus 13% mana cost reduction, plus 8% movement speed. And with the mask, homing orb projectiles spawn when dealing magic damage to an enemy. The orbs deal 100% of the weapon's damage and can deal critical hits. I also crafted the Tears of Heaven, which is very powerful at this stage. This is also one of the 4 main ingredients for the subsuming vortex, leaving only the event horizon and the Arbor of Elements to be crafted, plus miracle matter. At this time, I slayed the Great Sand Shark, and then made the Celestial Emblem. I bought all 4 very expensive buff candles from the wizard in preparation for the next boss, Anaida and the Leviathan. They proved to be slightly difficult towards the end. On the first attempt, I got to the second phase, as if that's hard, and proceeded to die not seconds after the Leviathan began with his big balls. But on the subsequent attempt, I came out victorious. straight on to the next boss, Astromoratus. And now, one of the easiest bosses in the entirety of Terraria. Golem. I didn't do anything in between. I just went straight to the temple and put down this pet rock. With the Pixel now in hand, I can enter the Abyss and gather Scoria ore. With perennial bars, cryonic bars, and now Scoria bars, I can craft Life Owl, which can be used in the Advanced Display, Miracle Fruit, and even some post-Moonlord boss summons. Also, with these Scoria bars, I can make the aforementioned Sigil of Calamitous, giving me a significant boost overall. In the same session, I also made the Asgard's Valor, giving me a very useful ram dash. Duke Fishron, my next victim, be a tough one, similar to the Plaguebringer Goliath. It's been quite some time since my last upload, and I hope this more than makes up for my absence. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe for more. I appreciate your patience, and I hope you all have a great day. The next episode should be the finale. Anyways, peace.